Okay, I am so thrilled and delighted to be here with my good friend, much loved radio presenter Angie Greaves. I don't know where to start, but I really wanted to interview you for this inspiring interview series because we've had conversations over the last, and I really do like your energy, your heart, your passion, and the magic that you bring to what you do. I know how powerful the voice is and the impact that has. Lots of people don't get to also see you, so it's so wonderful that people are seeing you now. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your life journey. You were saying before that you've not really known anything else other than
radio.
Yeah.
I left college with a view to going to teacher training.
Mm-hmm.
Walked into Capital Radio. The intention was to stay there for a year, get some money, and then go to teacher training college.
Right.
And I realised...
So you were doing secretarial stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I realised about 2 years in, I'm still here. Why am I still here? Somebody asked me to do a voiceover, and that was it.
So it's one of those moments that we wouldn't have known you doing all the stuff that you've done, and you've worked for large numbers of successful radio stations over that period of time.
I was at Capital in the 80s, administration and also production.
Yeah.
But I've worked at LBC. I freelanced there. I freelanced at Jazz FM, at Smooth FM. I did a bit of BBC local radio as well. And when I had my children, I just would call friends up and say, listen, I've got some time on my hands. If you want people to do cover, and that was it. That was it. And I think not being attached to one station gave me the insight of the art of communication.
Right.
So music radio and speech radio, they are exactly the same. You are communicating. One, you communicate primarily with music. One, you communicate primarily with speech.
Right.
But it's all the same.
And what is, we're here at the moment at Magic, what is Angie's magic? Because I know I was speaking a while ago to my brother, they said, oh, Angie, what would you say is your magic, and what is it that people connect to with you because they clearly do? You know, what is your magic?
I'll be very honest and say I don't know what it is. I always try to enjoy myself. The way I see it is I always envisage what the audience is doing at the time that I'm on the radio. So when I was on Choice FM, I imagined myself not wanting to get out of bed because I didn't want to. So what would I want to get me out of bed to make my day?
Right.
And then I would adopt that attitude through speech into the mic.
Right.
When I was on LBC, I spoke it was an afternoon show, so it was, in my mind, at that time, mainly stay-at-home parents, perhaps people in shops, perhaps people working, and at a certain time looking at their watches, oh my goodness, I want to go home. And I would think, right, what would I want to hear at that time? Okay, so drive time, when I was doing drive time on Magic, what do I want? I've had one of those days. Everybody's got someone at work that if they come this close, they're going to knock them out. So when I've got through the day, I'm in the car. What do I want to ease me from the tension of work to get me to my front door?
Right, and that's magical.
Or I'm on the train, and there's a lot of people around me. I've got my app in my ears from my phone. What do I want to just get me into that mode of winding down from work and getting home?
Right.
And so I put myself in the listener's place.
Is it a huge responsibility when because I know for a number of the shows that you've been on, you've been top rated on those particular. Is it a huge responsibility that when you're broadcasting to millions of people, to hundreds of thousands of people, thousands of people, however many people that and people over the year, week in and week out, is there a lot of responsibility in terms of there you are, it's just you and them, and you play this intimate part in their life, and you can't see them and you're not getting any feedback? How do you feel about that?
You never I always, in my mind, speak to one person.
Right.
So, okay, my highest figures were just under $1 million.
Right. Wow.
If I was to open the mic and go, how are you lot?
Yes.
Well, who's she talking to?
I see.
You open the mic, remember, you've had a hard day at work. That project is just getting on your nerves, that email needs to be sent, that person is getting on your nerves. I open the mic, hi, how are you today?
Right.
How have you been at work today?
Right, it's that person, because often we don't feel as though we've been met on it. It's such a struggle that, and when somebody does connect with us, suddenly it's completely different. I want to ask you a little bit about what you've learned along this journey. I'm assuming that, I was a singer and performer and so on. It's so difficult often when people are trying to make it in any industry, but in creative industries. I guess that you've probably had your fair share of luck, but then luck over many, many years, it's not luck, it's hard work, it's talent, it's dedication.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us a little bit about how has it been, and how do you keep being motivated to do what you do? Because presumably it's tough, it's challenging, it must be a challenging environment, and I'd imagine lots of people would love to do what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. I think to sit here and go, oh, it's wonderful. Yes, radio is a wonderful tool, but we're dealing with people. We're dealing with people. We're dealing with egos. Let's be real here. There have been many, many mountaintops. There have been many, many valleys. And I've learned as I've got older, and this might sound like a cliche, once you've been in the valley, there's only one place to go, and that's the mountaintop. Now, you never return to the same valley unless you didn't learn the lesson.
Right.
And I think that can be said with most jobs, in relationships on a daily basis. That could be a husband and wife situation. If your husband keeps doing the same thing over and over again, then we haven't learnt the lesson. We haven't explained, darling, I don't like that, blah, blah, blah. And I think it is exactly the same with work. And also, valleys are the beginning of growth.
Right, because again, one of the things that can happen in entertainment, isn't it, that people look in and just assume it's all hunky-dory. And I know that through your work, you've also interviewed all sorts of people, all sorts of successful people. I want to find out from you, what is it that you've learned? Because also, and I've noticed this from the times when we do podcasts and so on, you've got a wonderful style of just connecting, which is so warm, it's so insightful, it's welcoming to the guest, it's inviting to the listener. You ask rich questions, but they're also very easy questions. But I want to find out from all those people who you've met, and presumably met all sorts of people, what is it that you've learned in life, and what is it that you've learned about this thing about success? Because you're in and around this success industry. Success.
I think you need to know what you define as success. Some people say that you're successful when you've got lots of money. Other people say, well, you're successful because you've managed to sustain it this long.
Or the number of figures, or the figures that people are watching, or whatever.
I think the importance and the root of success, and this is just my opinion, is to be true to yourself. Be true to yourself and know your craft. I love music. I love all types of music. When I first left Choice, people were very, very angry. How could you leave Choice? You're not going to be able to play any reggae. You're not going to be able to play any soca, blah, blah, blah. But I'm a broadcaster. And my gift is communication. Now, that could be without music. That could be around music. That could be in a situation that we're in now. And I truly do believe that communication is the key.
And is there a trade-off between, because what you're saying is very powerful, that thing about being yourself, is there a potential trade-off between being true to yourself? I'd imagine that's great, we want to do that, but the courage to do that, because that sometimes might mean I am going to make a change here or there. How have you managed to do that? Because lots of people might be thinking, doing whatever they're doing, Angie, and think, I'd love to somehow change something, but I'm just not sure if I can or will things. How have you managed that?
It's quite poignant that we're doing this interview now, because 3-4 weeks ago I changed radio slots, and I wanted to make this change for a long time. I did the drive show for 5.5 years, very, very successful, never out of sponsorship, advertisers galore, competitions galore, I mean, you name it. but it was starting to get heavy on the, I was going to say the work-life balance, I'm going to say the life-work balance. My life started to, I couldn't give as much to my life as I wanted to. I have a husband, I have children, and I had to start saying, well, hang on, something here is unbalanced. It took a...
Did it take courage?
Absolutely, because, courage. Well, you know, people, I was asked, you know, are you sure you're doing the right thing? This is, you know, the top drive show in London. Yes, and it is. But if I were to become ill, are people going to sit around my bed and say, Angela, thank you so much for being the top drive presenter in London? Or are my children going to go, Mum, you weren't there? And my children are now at an age where they need me. Now, I consider myself blessed that Magic, after a long time of negotiating, did say, listen, we still want you, so we're going to put you in a different slot. There's nothing worse than feeling that you're not wanted. And there's nothing worse than staying in a position where you're drying out, where you're burning out. And I'm not just talking about broadcasting. I'm lucky, I work 3 hours a day. There are people in offices that work 8, 10, 12 hours a day. They are burning out.
And you say something so powerful, you know, Angie, because I'm thinking this blend between doing something that you love, and you're lucky in your case, like it so happened that when you were taking this back to the teacher training and you found yourself, and broadcast was the thing you loved, and of course you honed your craft, but that balance with life, which I guess that lots of people don't get that right. Is there anything else that you've learned from the people who you've met along the way who are successful? What have you learned from all the different people you've met? Because I'd imagine you met all sorts of people, and all sorts of people that, you know, that most of us may not have met. What is that you've learned from them, or from observing, and then just generally speaking, what's it that you've learned? I know that obviously you'll see them often very briefly, but what's it you've learned? What's it you picked up?
I've seen that, I was going to say highly successful people, highly recognised people that we've seen on the TV, film, theatre. A lot of them are quite tired. The majority that I've met are tired, and some have been very open and said it, and have needed to take time out, needed to look at the work-life balance. I mean, we've just recently had Michelle Collins in Coronation Street. Her daughter's taking her GCSEs. She's given up acting because she needs to be there for her daughter. There's an infamous story about Chaka Khan, who's
my favourite singer.
Well, there you go. Who's spent her life singing, but you sit down with Chaka Khan, you get her in a studio situation, and she, you know, when you get her to that point whereby she's talking to you as we're talking now, she will openly say, I've had a fantastic career, but my children needed me. And
I've heard those that openly and powerfully.
I've interviewed her. She said that very same thing. Right. We need a work-life balance.
What is it that, and we all seem to fall into this trap.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we all seem to fall in this trap. We pursue this notion about success, this, and there'll be people watching this and they'll think, yeah, but I want to achieve and do the kind of things that you've done. What do you feel it takes to balance this thing? Because that seems to be the holy grail. How can I move forward in my career and find something and do something I love and keep myself sane and balanced? What would you say to a young Angie or somebody who's wanting to get into this kind of industry? Because I think one of the things I admire about you is that I don't think that is easy. I think it really requires real courage, real stepping back, real looking at what's really, really important, especially if one's successful, because then there are all sorts of other pressures and all sorts of demands and all sorts of people are part of that equation.
Yeah,
what's your take on that, Angie? What's your advice? I'm wondering, is there an advice to a young Angie or to somebody who's young watching this?
I would say to young Angie, enjoy yourself, do it all, but set a time limit. Otherwise you're going to find, you're just going to burn out. You have to set goals. You have to know that now I'm just going to go for it. Whatever comes my way, I'm going to grab it. But in 5 years' time, I have to have this set up. I have to have these foundations set up so that I can build.
So those things might be personal things, that might be family, that might be time, other things that are interest to you. What are those things, or is it might be these are just the things I'm willing to have achieved in my career, otherwise I need to look afresh? What kind of things might they be?
I think you need to be realistic with your time.
Right.
I think you need to be honest with yourself.
Right.
There's a lot of people working in whatever industry now, they're not happy.
Right.
So even if you want to make the break, you then get caught in a trap because you're earning a certain amount,
right.
you get the X amount of holidays a year, you're driving the car, but then you're doing this job that you don't like.
Oh, no, that's important,
happy.
isn't it? So the thing is, you were fortunate in that you found that thing that broadcast you love. Somebody might be doing something, but it's not what they love. They might be in any industry. So if that bit's not there, then you're in trouble.
Well, you're mentally and emotionally burning out,
right.
aren't you? As well as physically burning out,
right.
because then you're doing a job that you don't like.
Right. Right.
It's stressful
right.
to be doing a job that you don't like.
Right, yes.
And then you get caught into the trappings of living once you've got your house and your car, but you're doing this job that you don't like. That is stressful. So I think you need to find the job that you want. I think you need to be very, very honest with yourself. Go for it. Just have that time when you're going to go, right, this is it. I'm going to go out there and achieve as much as I can. But by the time I am 25, 26, whatever age it is, I need to have X amount in the bank, and I need to know that this profession that I've chosen is where I want to be. Because then you see, Rasheed, when the ego kicks in, as it will, it kicks in with everybody, you're grounded because you know you're doing what's your heart wants.
Right, and I just want to touch on one thing before we close, and I could speak to you all day. I want to talk about the word that bubbles up for me is the word talent, skill, and thinking, because there's that saying, isn't it, particularly in industries like this, it takes many years to become an overnight sensation. This saying quote came to me recently, that don't be so obsessed in trying to be a star that you might miss out on success. I can think of lots of people who've been so obsessed that there's something they want, that some level of success eludes. So I'd imagine that you've got to work incredibly hard, but you've got to be mindful. What's your take on that? Because it does take, it's like being an athlete, one's got to put in the hours in. What's your take on all of that? And again, do you have a take from your own experience and looking at all the other people who you've met who've been successful and achieved stuff? What's your take on what does it actually take?
Know your craft.
Right.
You are a life coach. There are many, many people who probably think, oh, I can be a life coach. I can go and sit down and talk to people and get them to sign a cheque or put some cash in my hand. But there's no longevity in that if it's not in your heart. There are many, many people who I'm sure you've seen, you've been in the business. They want to be where you are. They want to do what you're doing. They're not thinking about what's right for them.
And it's interesting what you're saying. They may not know about the valleys.
Absolutely.
I love the story. I don't know if you know, but there's a story about, I was reading a book about Bob Marley's early career. And early on in his career, he was selling lots of records with the Wailers. He was still sleeping on a friend's kitchen floor. It may well be many, many years before you see any kind of payoff. Is that what you're also pointing to?
Yeah. And I think as well, if you're not true to yourself, if you're going to go into an arena because you've seen someone else's current point on the track. So let's take a 100-metre race. You've seen someone at 80 metres. They didn't just go from 0 to 80. They ran and probably tripped over and sweated and scratched their knees. So you don't know what got them from 0 to 80.
Such a point.
So you have to know yourself, what it is you want to do, your level of success. Don't look at anybody else's success, because in their eyes they might not even be successful.
What you're saying is so powerful. I was chatting with a wonderful client of mine the other day, and who was in football, and they're running a business, and he was just having a few ups and downs, and I said, well, how do you feel about football? He's passionate about it all the time, always passionate. I said, you've got to find that in what you're doing now, whereby that you're just so passionate about it all of the time.
Absolutely.
Then I know and this person's got amazing talents, I know that you're going to make it work. And and this person's so talented in so many different ways. I think that you're saying something very powerful, that somebody's got to find, it's funny, their magic, that thing that...
Yeah.
Angie, is there anything else you want to say or share before we close? I mean, what are your hopes and so on for the future, generally for Angie, in terms of what you're doing and in the world, now that you've taken this time in terms of life balance and other kind of stuff? And I can see you're radiant, you're glowing. Yeah. Is there anything that you want to share? What are your hopes for the future, and what is it overall about life that it is that you have most learned, if you had to distill it into perhaps a sentence?
Okay. I'm very much looking forward to re-energising myself now that I've got the work-life balance a bit more balanced. Wow. And I want, there's just this outpouring at the moment that I really want to share through Feeling Fab.
Mm-hmm. Feeling Fab's the website.
That's the website,
resource.
Yeah. And I'm just raring to go. Mm-hmm. And I would say to anybody watching this, don't look at anybody else's success. Don't look at what you believe someone else's success is. You set your benchmark and you go for it with your heart. With your heart. Wow. Go for it.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it, and I'm a motivational speaker, any better than you have. And I just so knew that when I was starting this new inspiring interview series, I just knew that I had to speak to you, because I know that your heart, your magic, your spirit, your soul, your voice, your words, and your generosity of spirit will really resonate with people who are listening to this. So I just want to wish you every ongoing success, which is true success and happiness, just in all the stuff that you're doing. I'm looking forward to that, and I'm also looking forward to, with some of the podcasts and so on that we're doing, I'm looking forward to that. So I'm just going to leave you to smile at the camera as I turn that off. And
good
thank
to
you so
talk
much.
to you.
Oh,
He's
pleasure.
Good.
Oh, that's kind.